Welcome back. This is Lab 3 of the Building a File Server in Windows 2000 MegaLab. In this lab, our focus is first going to be on disk quotas, and then we're going to examine how a user connects to a server by using a mapped network drive within a login script. Now, disk quotas is a new feature within Windows 2000 that allows you to control how much hard drive space a user can have on a partition by partition basis. You as the administrator set the default storage amount, and users are monitored based upon the ownership of a file. Let's go take a look at this. Now, the first thing we're going to do is connect over to SRv11 using terminal services. Okay, now that we've logged on SRv11, which is basically our main file server throughout this lab, we're going to open up the disk quotas on the D partition. Okay, to get there, I'm just opening up my computer, right-clicking on D, and going to Properties. You see several tabs up here, but the one we want to focus on is the Quota tab. Okay, by default, quotas are disabled, and there are some things we should talk about before we move forward. First off, quotas are enabled on a partition by partition basis. Okay, what do I mean by that? Well, remember, we have only one physical hard drive in this system, and we divided it up into two partitions, C and D. If we were to go look at the disk management tool right now, we will briefly here, you see that we only have one physical hard drive, okay, noted right here, disk 0, and it's divided up into two different partitions, C and D. So disk quotas work on a partition by partition basis. So I can turn it on here or turn it on here or both. Okay, so you have that flexibility. So we're going to go back here to D again, go to the Properties, Quota tab. The next thing you should realize is that disk quotas will only work on NTFS partitions. Okay, so you can't use it on FAT or FAT32, so keep that in mind as well. Now, to enable disk quotas, we select this box, and then we can click on OK, or in this case, we're just going to click on Apply so we can instantaneously see the changes. Before I do that, though, take a look up here at the stoplight. A red signal just indicates that disk quotas are currently disabled. When this turns to green, you know that disk quotas are on and functioning. If it's at the yellow portion, and it's only going to be there momentarily for the most part, this means that disk quota information is being rebuilt or just basically recalculated. Okay, let's go ahead and enable this. Okay, you should enable the quota system only if you intend to use quotas in this disk volume. When you enable it, the volume will be rescanned to update disk usage statistics. Okay, and it can take several minutes and also put a burden on the system. So if this was a live file server in the middle of the day, it might not be a good idea. Okay, we really had nothing on the system, very, very little information. So you see that it instantly went to the green light because there was very little for it to be calculated. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is run through some of these different options that we can set. So we already took care of the first one. Now the next entry here, deny disk space to users exceeding quota limit. A lot of people ask, well, why wouldn't you use that basically? And this one can basically save your hide if you're in a production environment. You don't always want to necessarily deny disk space to people. You could also set it up so you get error messages. So you get an error message indicating that somebody's over the quota limit, but you're not going to actively deny people space. Now this is important. Let's say that you had an email server and somebody got a brand new email in and they wanted to save this information onto a server. Well, if they exceeded their quota limit and you deny disk space to them, maybe they can't save this important email message. Okay, what if you're on vacation, you're not available to help the user out? For whatever reason, a lot of administrators will not select this box just to avoid hot water, that you might encounter if somebody can't actually save information. So we're going to leave this box unchecked. The next option, select the default quota limit for new users on this volume. Take a look at what this says. It says the default quota limit. Okay, so if we wanted to limit or not limit it at all, we could set this here. Do not limit disk usage. And once again, I usually get blank stares when I explain this option. What's the point of enabling quota management and then selecting the option down here to not limit disk usage? Okay, well, quota management's enabled, but when I select this option, what's actually happening now is that this is the default setting. It doesn't mean that I can't set individual entries for people. We're going to show that mechanism here in a second. It just means the default setting is set at no limit. Okay, so we are going to set a limit here, and we're going to set this over at 100 megabytes just to do a little test here. And keep this in mind, by the way. This default setting is set at kilobytes here. Very, very, very small number. Okay, you definitely want to raise this up. 1 kilobyte as a default limit is way too small. Normally that wouldn't even allow a user to save 1 file. Okay, so we're going to set our warning level to 75 megabytes. Our last 2 options down here that we'll discuss right now, we can log events when a user exceeds their quota limit or when a user exceeds their warning level. So we're going to log events within the event viewer. If you want to see events within the event viewer in addition to what you see in quota entries, this is a good thing to check. And I typically do check these boxes just to make sure that I don't miss any quota entries that I need to see. Okay, we're going to click OK here. And we're going to exit out of here, get back over to client 1. And I'm going to stop the video momentarily now so we can log off. And we're going to log back onto client 1 with the user account of Sue Stevens, so we can test out these new quota limits that we just put into place. Okay, we're logged back on to client 1 with the user account Sue Stevens, F. Stevens. And what we're going to do next is insert the Windows 2000 Server CD-ROM and copy the i386 folder over to SRV11. Now the reason we're using the Windows 2000 Server CD-ROM is not for a technical nature, it's just because it's a uniform thing to use. Everybody should have this, and we can use this same file, and I know that it's plenty big to test our quota limits. So I'm going to go ahead here and put the CD-ROM in. Okay, and we'll wait a second here for it to pick up. And if you have the i386 folder copied over locally to your hard drive, you can do the same thing. That's not a problem. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and click OK here. Now, we're not going to install or do anything like that, so make sure you're careful about what you do. I'm clicking on Browse this CD, because this will bring up the folder showing me the contents of the CD-ROM. And we're going to do our test using the i386 folder, because this should be just over 300 megabytes. Let's take a look just to verify that. Yeah, 318 megabytes in size. So this will be a good, adequate test to test out our disk quotas. The next thing we're going to do is connect over to the actual share on SRV11. So I'm going to go to Run and use our universal naming convention, / SRV11, okay, / public, and we'll open that up. And then Sue Stevens is part of the sales group, so she has permissions to access the sales folder. So that's where we're actually going to copy this. Okay, and what we'll do here now, however you want to do it, you can right-click, copy, you can drag and drop, whatever you're comfortable with. I'll just drag and drop it over here, and we'll see the copy process start up. Now this will take quite a while here, not 133 minutes, but a couple of minutes nevertheless. So what I'm going to do is stop the video, wait for this to get to the point I want to show you, and then I'll restart the video at that time. Okay, eventually you should receive this error message, and it may not read exactly here because this is talking about the file that it tried copying. Depending upon what you have in your system, it may or may not copy on or stop on this particular file, but this is the one that I received. So right now it's telling me that there's not enough free disk space, and this is exactly what would happen to one of your users. So keep this in mind. You need to make sure that this is not going to be a problem. If they're in the middle of copying something important and you're not around and they're not able to do it because their disk quota doesn't hold that, this could cause an issue. Okay, so I'm going to click OK here, and what I want to show you now, just to make sure we're on the same page, I connect back over to SRV11, log on as the administrator, and then also go over to the D drive. One thing we did not show before, and I want to make sure that you understand, okay, I went back and checked this box. Without checking this box, you're not going to get that error message pop up. Okay, so if you want that error message to pop up, if you indeed want users to be cut off, you have to check this box. Okay. With it unchecked like this, the user would continue to be able to copy information as much as they wanted. It wouldn't stop them. What it would do though is generate error messages within the event viewer if you check the messages here below, or within your automatic quota entries that we're going to show you here in just a second. Okay, and we're going to go there right now. If you open up quota entries, let's take a look at what we see here. Okay, first thing is the actual status. Okay, we have a warning and an OK. Now, warning is in conjunction with the Sue Stevens user account. You see right here we have Sue Stevens at benandbrady.com. Tells you how much disk space has been used, her quota limit, the warning level. Okay, percent used gives you all that information. Now back here we see the OK status, and before you saw that it was taking a while to generate the name. Sometimes it takes a long time to actually figure out which security identifier goes with which user account, and that's what you saw being generated at that point there. Okay, now the administrators group does not have a limit, and you see that set over here. There's no limit set for quotas or for warning, so you can actually put in as much information as you want as the administrator without being limited. Okay, next thing to look at. What if we want to create some sort of custom quota? For example, Sue Stevens is fine being limited at 100 megabytes. What if you have a special user who does, who knows, graphic artwork, has larger files, and needs more disk space on the actual file server? How do we make exceptions to this rule? Very simple. You go up to quota, new quota entry, and you go out here and you pick a user. Now one thing I want to point out to you, if you browse through here, you don't see any groups or organizational units. And that's one of the downfalls of disk quotas within Windows 2000. Hopefully this will be fixed with the new release of .NET Server coming out in 2003. Okay, because we cannot control groups with quota entries. So my only choice here is to pick individual users. In a small environment, it's not really a big deal. In a larger environment where you have to go out and pick individual users, this becomes more of a hassle to manage. And that's where third-party disk quota software comes in. There's a couple different products out there that have been doing it for a long time that allow you to actually get more customized with how you use and assign disk quotas. Okay, so if you're interested in those, if you want more features or functionality than Windows 2000 provides, you can go out and take a look at those products. Now for this example, we're going to pull out the user Jack Straw, going to add them to the account list below, click OK, and now here's where we get to set the actual quota limits. So if I want this user to be extra special, give them absolutely no limits whatsoever on disk usage, I can select this top option. In this case, we're going to limit Jack Straw to 350, oops, a little bit too much, 350 megabytes of disk space, and we're going to give him a warning right about 275. Okay, so he's going to be limited at 350, warned at 275. When we click OK here, you now see that we have the user account right here, Jack Straw, his logon name, the amount used, limit, warning. You have all the statistics right in front of you. Okay, next thing we're going to do, let's go ahead and minimize this, click OK, and we're going to go back down to Client 1. So if you're doing this at home, you may not be using terminal services. The only thing you'd have to do is just go over, switch computers, log on to Client 1 at this point. From Client 1 now, what we're going to do is log off, and we're going to log back on as Jack Straw and put this quota to the test. So I'm going to stop the video here momentarily, and we'll join right back up here. Okay, I'm back logged on to Client 1 as Jack Straw here, J Straw, and what we're going to do is connect over to the public folder once again. So it's UNC of //SRV11/public. And Jack Straw is part of the marketing department, so he's going to be able to have access to the marketing folder. And we're going to do the same thing. Okay, we're going to copy the i36 folder over to the marketing folder and see what actually happens. Once again, make sure you understand we're not doing this because the i36 folder is some specialty that causes this to happen. This is just simulation. Over time, Jack Straw would continue to add files or folders to this particular folder, and his disk quota would be tested. We're going to kind of speed up this process by copying a lot of files over there at one time. So I'm going to open up my computer, and I've copied the i36 folder over to my local hard drive to speed up this process. So you can copy it off of the CD-ROM drive or off of the local hard drive. Either way will work. So I'm going to copy it, and while this is copying over, I'm going to pause the video and we'll restart once this is copied over. Okay, we finished copying over Jack Straw's i36 folder. We had no error messages. So what we're going to do now, we're going to connect over to SRV11 and take a look at the results. So terminal services, SRV11. Log on as the administrator. Once we're over at SRV11, the first thing we're going to do is go take a look at our actual quota entries and see what they look like now. Okay, so I'm going to go down here to quota entries. And now let's take a look at what we have. We have our Sue Stevens account still, and we have Jack Straw showing a warning. Okay, now look how much disk space he is using up. 289 megabytes. His quota limit is 350 megabytes, but his warning level is at 275. So that's why we have this status over here as a warning. 275 have been used up. Okay, so let's now go look and see how disk quotas are actually determined, because I think this is even more important, more confusing to most students. What we're going to do is open up the D drive. Okay, go find that public folder that we were sharing information over to, or copying information over to. And first one we'll look at is the marketing folder. Okay, and here's the i386 folder for Jack Straw, I believe. Let's go ahead and let me retrace this. i386, you go to the properties of it, security tab, go to the advanced tab then, and we have 3 tabs up top. You want to select the owner tab. Okay, and the owner tab determines who the current owner of this item is. And the owner is defined as whoever creates the item, or in this case, we didn't create the i386 folder, but we actually created it on this server. Meaning it wasn't here before. Who's the user who's responsible for copying it over to this particular server? And in this case, it's Jack Straw. So disk quotas take this into account basically. So anybody who's the owner of a particular file or folder is going to be charged within the disk quotas. Okay, so that's why Jack Straw is charged for this particular folder. I'm going to go ahead and cancel this out, and let's back up a step and take a look at the sales folder. Okay, we'll actually open that up. Go to the properties of the i386 folder, the security tab, the advanced button, and once again choose that owner tab. Now we see that it's Sue Stevens. So we have the exact same i386 folder, but it's different now because a different user actually copied it over to the server and placed it on the server. So when you copy something, there's the possibility of having multiple owners, multiple people responsible for the amount of information that's going to be charged to their disk quota. Let's go to a test here and show you how this works. First thing we're going to do is delete these i386 folders. So I'm going to delete this one. And then I'm going to go over to marketing and delete this folder as well. And give it a second here. What we're doing basically is clearing out our disk quotas. We want to be left with nothing here so we can take a look and have a better idea. So that was just telling us that we need to permanently delete it. It's too big to fit into the recycle bin. So let's just take a second here for this to finish up. So what we're going to do then is, after this is done, we're going to empty the recycle bin. It's very important. If the item is still in the recycle bin, it's still technically on the hard drive because it can be restored, and you're going to be charged for it. So you want to delete all the information out of the recycle bin as well. So that'll be the next thing we look at. Let's empty this out. Okay. And let's go see if our quotas were actually adjusted. So go to the properties of D, the quota tab, and then quota entries. Okay, Sue Stevens, amount used is 0 bytes, Jack Straw, 0 bytes. So you can see this is already reflected within the quota entries. Sue Stevens and Jack Straw both are listed as OK, and they both have their full quotas, 100 megabytes for Sue Stevens and 350 for Jack Straw. So let's close this out. And we're going to go back over to client 1. Okay, and what we're going to do now is log on to Sue Stevens once again. So I'm going to stop the video momentarily here and log on to Sue Stevens, and we'll start right back up. Okay, I've logged back on to client 1 as Sue Stevens, and we're going to do a little bit of test here to see what the difference is on file ownership between copying and moving. So first things first, we're going to connect over to our share, SRV11 public. Okay, once we get here, Sue Stevens is going to open up the general folder. Okay, and she's going to create a file named test. Oops, just a normal text document is fine. Okay, and the next thing we're going to do, we're going to log off real quick here and log back on as Jack Straw. So as Sue Stevens, we've created a file. We're going to go over, pretend like we're on another Windows 2000 Pro machine, and see how Jack Straw looks at this file, how it appears to him. So we'll stop this momentarily once again. We'll start right back up. Okay, I've logged back on as Jack Straw now, we're going to connect over to the exact same share, server 11 public. I'm going to open up the general folder, and I want to look at the owner of this particular file. So if I right click, go to properties, just like before, then now we're going to go to the security tab. Okay. In case you missed that, let me cancel that and show you once again what that said here. Okay, it says you only have permission to view the current security information on test. Okay, so we can only view this information here. Just go ahead and click OK. And now we're going to go to the Advanced tab, and once again we have the Owner tab. Okay, it warns us once again we can only view it, you can't change it. Sue Stevens is the actual owner of this particular file. So we just want to verify this and show this up here right now. Sue Stevens is the owner of this file. So we're going to cancel out of this. And the next thing we're going to do is copy and paste this folder. Okay, so it's the equivalent of dragging and dropping. Just copy it and paste. We're going to copy this folder. So I select copy. And now I'm going to paste this folder over into my marketing folder. Okay, so now we have two different files. We have a test file here in the marketing folder, and we also have a test file that still exists back in that general folder. And what I want to do is take a look at the properties of this particular file now. Okay, so I go to Security, Advanced, Owner, and look who the owner is now. Jack Straw is the new owner of this particular file, and that's because he copied it over. If we go back and look at the other file, it still exists here, and just as before, Sue Stevens is still the owner. Okay, so the ownership does not change here. So what's going on? Because Jack Straw created another copy of this particular file, well, Sue Stevens isn't responsible for it if people keep making copies and copies and copies of it. So now in this case, Jack Straw was charged for this particular file size. Next thing I want to do is actually delete this file. So I'm going to go back over to Marketing and delete this file. Okay, and what we're going to look at now is what happens if we move the file. So we're going to go back over to the general folder, and this time what we're going to do is actually cut and paste it. When you cut and paste, you're moving it. So I right click, cut, and now I'm going to bring it back over to the marketing folder once again. Right click, paste. Alright, so the file no longer exists within the general folder. This is the only version of the file right here. Okay, and let's take a look at who the owner is now. Security, Advanced, and Owner. Okay, it remains Sue Stevens because there's only one file. Sue Stevens was the originator of this particular file, and even though Jack Straw moved it, okay, we didn't create a new file. Okay, so Sue Stevens was already charged for this once. Nobody's going to be charged, for this particular file. Okay, let's now go back over to Client 1 and log on as the administrator. So I'm going to stop the video, log back on as the administrator, and then we'll continue on from here. Alright, we've logged back on to Client 1 with the administrator account, and we're going to move on to another topic, mapping network drives. Mapping network drives is useful if you're constantly going to the same share over and over and over again, kind of like we were doing here using a UNC name for //. We didn't do it with this account, but // SRV 11 / public. Okay, if you're constantly typing that in over and over and over again, or if your users are not familiar with how to use universal naming conventions, mapping network drives is an alternative. Now, it's very easy to reconnect to a share, and mapped network drivers are unique on each computer. So that's one thing to point out right from the get-go. Mapped network drives, fairly straightforward as far as how to configure them. Okay, but there's two main ways we can do it. One is through a GUI interface, okay, graphical user interface, which is a little bit easier to use than the next alternative we'll look at, the command line. Now, there's different ways we can actually map the network drive. There's actually tons of them throughout Windows 2000. You can do it directly from a share itself. You can do it within Windows Explorer. You can right-click on My Network Places. You can right-click on My Computer. Okay, there's all different sorts of ways of doing this. Okay, and what I'm referring to is if you see this map network drive command here, that opens up this little map network drive wizard and allows you to choose a drive letter and a path to which we want to map a drive. Okay, so for example, we right-clicked on My Network Places in this case, and we're going to map a network drive. Now the next thing we're going to do is choose the actual path, and you can browse for it or you can type in a UNC name. So let's just assume that we're not really sure what the UNC name is and we're going to browse. So we browse through our network, we open up SRV11, and then we select the public folder where we're trying to get. Click OK, and now I have the ability to specify which drive letter I want to use. Now this is important to point out. All of these drive letters are open, so we have anywhere between B, E, F, G, all the way up to Y. Okay, and we only have up to Y because we use Z for the CD-ROM, don't forget that, and we can use any of these letters we want. What I try to do is correspond the actual name of the share. So this is public, for example. I'm going to use the P drive. Just makes things simple. Now, this is unique on individual computers, meaning on this system, client 1, I could map to the public drive with the drive letter P. On another system, I don't have to use the same drive letter. I could map to this exact same share and use the letter Q, for example. There's no reason to do this, and it causes confusion, so I recommend that you try to use the same drive letters on all the different systems where you might map network drives, though. Next option here is Reconnect at Logon. If you want this share to be persistent, meaning if you want to constantly use the drive letter P, every time you reboot your computer and restart your system, you're going to want to check this box. If you don't check it, the next time you log off your system or reboot your system, the drive letter P will be disconnected. Let's go ahead and click Finish here and see what happens. Okay, it's going to connect out here in a second. Here you see that we're connected to public on SRV11, and you see the different public shares that we should be somewhat familiar with at this time right now. Another thing more importantly, because you can close this, but anytime we ever want to come back to it again, we just double-click My Computer, and now we have a P drive. Okay, so this is a real easy way. You can map as many different network drives as you want until you run out of drive letters. Makes it much, much easier to connect to the different shares that you want to connect to. Now, if you don't need to use this anymore, you can simply disconnect it by right-clicking on this share and going to Disconnect. Okay, that disconnects this drive here, so it's going to disappear. And now if you wanted to reconnect that share, you'd have to use a UNC name or remap that network drive. Okay, let's move forward, and now we're going to talk about the command line interface. So another way of doing the exact same thing. To do that, we're going to go to Start, Run, and then enter in CMD to bring up a command line. Okay, now from here, first thing I want to show you is the actual command itself. And the command name is netuse, N-E-T-U-S-E. And the first thing I always like to do, especially when I'm looking at a new command or one that I'm not that familiar with, is put a space /? Okay, and this gives me the syntax of the command and all the different options that I can specify with this command. Okay, and this is a little bit confusing sometimes at first, but if you really sit down and try to break it down, it's usually going to help you out if you ever have a question on how a command works. Now, when we map a network drive, it's fairly straightforward. To do it, the first thing you do is specify the name of the command. So netuse. Next is a space. The drive letter that you want to use. So in this case, I'm going to use P:, and this is very important. There's got to be a space following this. Okay, so it's netuse space P:, space, and then you type in your UNC path, just like we did before. / SRV11 / public. Okay, so there's the whole command. Hit enter. You get this result here, the command completed successfully, and in the background you see it opens up this window once again, indicating that we are able to connect to it. If we go and check here, you see that we have our P drive remapped again. Okay, so that's another way of doing the exact same thing. If we want to delete that command from the command prompt, so let's say we want to delete this mapped network drive, it's netuse, it's always going to be the same base command, P / delete. Okay, P was deleted successfully. So now if I go back up to my computer, you see that P drive is no longer there. Okay, so that's how you use the net use command, just to give you a little brief rundown on that. Now, it's very important to realize that you can also use the net use command to automate the process of mapping network drives by using a login script. Because you may be wondering, why would you want to go through the hassle of typing in all this command when we have a nice graphical user interface that makes it simple to map network drives like I showed before? Well, we may want to automate this process. Okay, if you have 100 different systems in your network and you don't want to go around to each different system and maintain mapped network drives, you can write what's called a login script. And with a login script, you're going to be using these net use commands to your advantage to help you write this script. Okay? Now, login scripts are created by really just creating a text file, and within that text file using the net use command just like we used it here in the command prompt. After we get done modifying the text file, instead of saving it as a .txt file, the extension that indicates that it is a text file, we're going to use the extension of .bat for batch file. When you rename it with a .bat extension, it'll turn this file into a program, and it's going to execute all the different commands that you list within there. Login scripts then are usually deployed automatically by creating a group policy. Okay, and that's outside the scope of this particular lesson, but once you have your login script created, you then deploy it using a group policy within Active Directory, and those 100 systems we were talking about before can all now have the exact same login script run, have mapped network drives with very little effort on your part. Okay, let's go take a look then at how we do this. We're going to open up Notepad. So we're going Start, Programs, Accessories, and then going down to Notepad. And just like we did from the command prompt, we're just going to be entering in some different commands here. So the first one we're going to use, just to test this out, see how it works, is net use p:, just like we did before, and then the UNC path, / srv11 / public. Okay, so here's the actual whole command that we're going to use just to test this out the first time. Now you need to click File and then Save As. So this will give you the opportunity to rename the name of the file and also to change the extension. Okay, so down below, and I'm going to change this so it's saved right on my desktop. So I'm going to up arrow here back to the desktop, and I'm going to give the file a name of add pdrive.bat. Okay, so this .bat is important. This is what turns it into a batch file. Now a normal text file, looks like one of those notepads. When we save this, you see that we have this little cogwheel here, and it's actually what's known as a batch file. Okay, a couple things to watch out for when we're looking at this. If I double click on it, it's actually executing a command now, and I'll demonstrate that in a second. If I right click, I can go to Open or Edit. If you click on Open, it's the equivalent of double clicking a command and executing this particular program. If I click Edit, it allows me to open this command up and actually edit the different commands within the program file. So let's go ahead and execute this program and see what happens. If I double click it, okay, you see that it flashes a command prompt up real quick, and it looks like it connected our drive once again because this window opened up. So we can verify that, go here, check it out, and we do have our P drive mapped once again. Okay, let's go ahead and open Notepad back up again and look at the other command we learned. And this time what we're going to do is create the net use p delete command. So net use p:// delete. So we're putting this different command into a different file for right now, just for demonstration purposes. I click File, Save As, and just for description, we're going to name this one Remove pdrive. .bat, so we're turning it into a batch file once again. This part here is critical. You have to make sure that you remember to do that. Click Save. Okay, and now we have this batch command. If I double click this, should execute that command. If I go check here through my computer, I should no longer have the P drive, and that is the case. Okay, next thing we're going to do is combine these two commands together. Because normally a login script is one file. It's not like multiple files are run to perform this login script. So now we're going to combine these two commands together. So we're opening up Programs, Accessories, Notepad once again. And now we're going to list both of these commands, but it's very important that you list the delete command first. We'll explain that here in a second. So net use p /delete, and then enter the next command right underneath it. Net use p : and the UNC name. Okay, so we've got this whole thing, and we'll name this one remove and add p, so we know exactly what each one of these are for. Okay, remove and add p.bat. We go ahead and click save and get back to our desktop here. Before we actually execute this command, what I want to do is go map a network drive to a different drive letter here and show you how this command works, what it's actually useful for. So we're going to use the P drive, and this time, instead of connecting to the public, we're going to connect it out to the software folder. Okay, so the demonstration here, it's possible that somebody else mapped a network drive in their own system. Maybe they got an error for some reason, somehow or another, a mapped network drive was misassigned or reassigned to a different shared folder. Okay, and that's where this command comes in play here. If we look right now, the P drive is mapped to the software share. Now, if I tried executing the net use p command, so I'm trying to use the exact same drive that it's already used for a different share, I'm going to get an error command and it's not going to work. So my public folder would not be mapped. That's why we added this command here first. If we go back here to edit, by deleting first, we're basically eliminating any possibility that a mapped network drive already exists for P. Now, if there is no drive for P, if nothing exists already, then nothing's going to be deleted. It's not going to do any harm. And then after that command runs, the next command in line here is going to run, and then we're going to have a mapped network drive to the public folder. Okay, so once again, right now, P is mapped to the software share on SRv11. Let's see what happens when we run our new logon script that we just created. Okay, if we open up my computer, well, this actually popped up in the interim, but if we open up my computer, now we see that we no longer have the P drive mapped to software. It's been deleted, and then it's been remapped to the public folder. Okay, and that's what our goal was here, was to run the P drive so it's mapping up to the public folder. Okay, and once again, this would be deployed through group policy. That way you don't have to do anything. You just simply create this logon script here, and maybe you have several different entries, 6, 7, 8 different entries, however many mapped network drives you want. You save it to a certain location, and deploy it using group policy. It's very simple once you learn the ins and outs of group policy, which isn't too difficult. Alright, that finishes off MegaLab 2. I hope these videos were informative, and once again, thank you for watching.